A client of mine recently shared a story in our private group, and it inspired me to make this video because I'm pretty sure this is going to happen to you if it hasn't happened already. Her workday exploded. Her first pumping session of the day was way lower than she expected, so she had to do some troubleshooting in between, and her second one was much better. She was able to make up a little bit for that first session as well. And then during her third session, even though she was kind of back on track, her pump battery died. And she had to turn to some alternate techniques, and it was just crazy. She ended up getting her expected amount for the day, and all of this while being on call, by the way, which is even more impressive. She managed to come home with her milk supply protected and the same amount that she normally would, okay? What a day. She wasn't freaking out though. She wasn't panicking. She was relatively calm and navigated this day, protected her supply, and then shared it as a win because she was proud of that in our community. How did she do this? I think is the big question. In this video, I want to share some tips on dealing with unexpected roadblocks, specifically as a pumping working mom, all right? I wanted to keep this video short, so initially I started a list of 3 things, and then it went to 4, and now it's 7. So I'm really sorry. I will still try and keep this short, but I just have so much I want to share with you, and it takes a lot to make this journey happen, right? So if you do want a step-by-step guide to making this all work, everything you need to know, and a team of experts waiting there for you, we do have a long-term coaching program that you can apply for with a link down below. But let's dive into some really practical tips inside of this video. Okay, number 1, this might be obvious, but my first tip to you is to have a backup plan. All right, we can't plan for every scenario that may come our way, but having some kind of plan or backup is an awesome idea. So think through your work scenario, or your day, or like whatever's happening here. What are some roadblocks that you could see popping up? A lot of times you can come up with some ideas of things that might happen, all right? My number 1 tip to having a backup plan is to have a backup pump. A great option for that is a manual pump. So a small, simple hand pump, doesn't have a battery, have it all assembled. You can just leave it at work or in your car or something like that. For the day, I don't even want to say if, I want to say when you forget a little tiny piece of your pump, the little valve that goes in it, or the bottle or the charger or the whole pump. I mean, it's going to happen, okay? If you make it your entire experience as a working mom and never forget anything, please comment below and tell us all of your secrets because we really, really need them. It's just life is crazy, okay? Have a manual pump. Have an alternate pumping location. Sometimes it's a locational barrier that we run into, so think about some other options there. Have some backup coverage if you need someone to cover your position while you have to leave. Maybe a couple contingency plans in case things don't go fantastic. Maybe an alternate pumping time. So if you are a surgeon and you get stuck in a 5-hour surgery, that happens, right? How are we going to adjust there, and what can you do to mitigate some of the problems that may come with that? You know, or if you have a meeting that consistently pops up, how can we adjust our scheduling? Make sure you have open communication with your manager, boss, coworkers, whoever's there supporting you. And never forget that a short pump is always better than skipping a pumping session altogether. Okay, number 2, know what works. And I mean specifically for you. Okay? You need to really understand your individual milk supply. So what is normal and expected for you? This can really help you pivot in the moment if you know where you're trying to get, okay? If your milk supply is all over the place and really inconsistent, it can be really hard to know, first of all, when you even need to troubleshoot, and then 2, what to do. Because it's like, well, I only got an ounce and a half that time, but I don't really know what's normal here. So having a really good baseline, understanding your own milk supply can really, really help you. And then know where your limits are. How long can you go before you see problems? And what have you found in the past? Where's that line where negative consequences start to happen? Both short term, long term's a little bit harder to see, but everyone's a little different there, right? So know where your limits are. Some of that has to do with your milk storage capacity too. If you kind of know how much your breasts are able to hold, and again, you don't have to find a specific number. We don't have to marry this concept, but knowing that you have a really small storage capacity and that you have to pump really frequently is going to help you adjust better, you know, versus like, I know I have a really large capacity, so I'm going to stress less and I'm going to adjust in a different way. Do you know what I mean? It's like you're very unique, and knowing your milk supply can really help you here. Okay, so there's a lot of information online on how to increase your milk supply. Some of it is research-based, most of it is not. That doesn't really matter. The only thing that matters is what works for you. What works for you specifically to increase your milk supply. That's what you need to know, okay? And sometimes we don't always do those things because they're not sustainable. If you know that upping your pumping schedule really works, or that, pumping a little bit longer tends to work, or getting some like power pumping in, or, some of these are just like not sustainable and we don't do them all the time, right? But knowing what works can really give you the power and the control when unexpected things happen, because you can feel confident that you know how to get it back for you specifically. Knowing which pumps work better. Does a wearable work okay for you or does it not? What are the implications there? Again, not skipping sessions is the best. So even if we have to do something a little less efficient, that can be good, but know how that affects you. Just knowing yourself. Okay, number 3 is to adjust as needed. I actually wrote go with the flow on this one, but it felt too punny, so I'm not even going to say it. Be flexible in your goals. I feel like if you're in the all or nothing thinking, which I am super guilty of as well, I tend to be a really all or nothing, very black and white kind of thinker, but having that kind of thinking in any part of motherhood is a recipe for disaster. And I've gotten way better at it as a mom of 3, mostly because I was forced to, because that is just not, you will go crazy and end up in the psych ward. We also need to review events impartially, okay? And I know this can be really, really hard when you're the one in it and you're so up close and you're like, I only have 2 ounces this session, I'm supposed to get 4. Like, what am I gonna do, But really backing up and looking at a bird's eye view of the situation. Okay, let me look at this 24-hour period. What happened? What things are in my control? What things are out of my control? What can I do to fix this? How can I avoid this in the future? Honestly, this is what we do a lot inside of our coaching program because we're impartial. We're not in the thick of it with you. So it can really help to have someone on the outside looking in. So you can just be like, here's the information. What do you see? Because I love data, especially. And a lot of people that work with me enjoy that as well. So they'll send me like, here's all this info. What do you think? And I can look at it because I'm not sleep deprived like you are. I'm not in the thick of this. This doesn't really affect me, right? So I can look more impartially and say, okay, well, how about this or this or this? What do you think? It can save so much brain power. But stepping back and looking at the bigger picture impartially can really help you, especially when things go unexpected. And then it's always a great idea to make up for lost progress as soon as you can, right? Sometimes that's right after the meeting that went long. That's maybe later that night when you get home and now you can do a little extra or make up with it because you kind of know yourself pretty well. Maybe that's on the weekends. Actually, Janet, who I shared her story at the very beginning, she did something similar. We were really working together on making her wearable pump more efficient for her. It was a necessity at the time because she was on call a lot. She's a midwife. She was doing births and things like this. And we just had to make it work. But we were really struggling. It took us a while to figure out kind of how to make that work efficiently for her. So she would do her best on her shift and then go home and utilize her baby, who was a really good nurser, to kind of make up for things. And on the weekends, it was like crazy nursing, right? And she would do a little extra pumping, kind of like making up for it. She had a little bit of a tendency to an oversupply, so it worked for her, but it just had to be what it was for a while. It wasn't ideal, but she was flexible and adjusted as needed while she was working through issues. I think it was easier too because there was a clear goal in mind and she had help. If you're just trying to do it on your own, I think that could be pretty overwhelming. But regardless, make up for what you missed or whatever happened later, right? It doesn't just have to be the end of the world. You know what I mean? Okay, number 4, this is one of my favorites, and that is to ditch perfection. All right. The only predictable thing in this whole experience for you is that there will be some unpredictability. Okay. I can almost guarantee it. You need to give yourself a lot of grace. You do not have to be perfect. And in fact, there really isn't even a perfect way to do this. If I were to write a book, which I'd love to do one day, if I were to write a book and say, here's the gold standard for a working pumping mom of what should be happening and what she should be doing, how she should be feeling, how people around her should be reacting. It doesn't exist, okay? I can't do it. It's not possible because there's no perfect standard. If you're so stuck in this idea of perfection, if it is, whether it was placed there by you or by somebody else, it can be really hard to try and maintain this invisible standard that probably doesn't even exist. I actually found a resource I'm going to put in the description for you. It was a list of like 15 or something quotes, just like one-liners about perfection. I want to share my 3 favorites with you that were really applicable to this conversation. One was from Sheryl Sandberg. I know you've probably heard it. And I live my life by this I love it. Done is better than perfect. This has helped me so much in so many aspects, but I think specifically in milk supply, done is better than perfect, and especially when we're talking about milk supply, okay? Done is better than perfect. Another one is perfection is the roadblock to progress. Think about that. If we have this perfection standard, we're likely not working toward actual progress. Small little wins, small little things add up to really big things. But if we're looking for this perfection standard right out the gate, it's unlikely that we're going to even get close. And then last, by Alfred Fiedler, I think it was, he said, have the courage to be imperfect. I know it's hard, and it does take courage, especially for the types of moms that tend to end up on my channel, that tend to come on and work with me as clients. You tend to be really highly educated, highly motivated, used to succeeding, used to being at the top, used to hitting those perfection kind of things. And this can be really, really hard when you apply this to motherhood and milk supply. Okay, number 5, we're getting there. Okay, remember your long-term goals, all right? Is one day going to kill your dreams? No, it's just not. But I think it's important to consider, are these happening consistently? Are you consistently having interrupted and bad days where we're not hitting what you know needs to be done? And then considering what adjustments may need to be made. Are you skipping nighttime feedings at 6 weeks postpartum consistently for whatever reason? Even if things are fine now, that may and probably will affect you in your long-term milk production, okay? So then we need to have a conversation. Do we need to adjust our goals, or do we need to find the motivation to fix this problem, right? Knowing your long-term goals can really help you, 1, hit them, okay? And then 2, find the motivation to keep going. I think when we're looking at long-term goals, I always ask this question, what else is important to you? Because life is not all about milk. And I get it. As a new mom, your one job is to keep your baby alive and feed them milk, right? It doesn't have to be your milk, but I know it's probably something that you want if you're still here on this video. But life isn't all about milk, especially for working moms. You have a career, you have a job, you have other responsibilities, and you're just not a milk machine, right? I think remembering your long-term goals. This is a short period in your life. And if for the first year back to work postpartum, we got to make some adjustments in your work goals, then maybe we do. Anyway, this leads me really well into number 6, which is to be realistic, okay? If you have a super busy job, if you have a crazy upcoming trip, if you have an unexpected tragedy in your life, if you have major life stressors, moving, switching jobs, things like this, challenges with your partner, divorce, death in the family, you might need to readjust, okay? Sometimes being realistic is really, really hard. Now, saying that, you also don't have to settle for one thing or the other. Again, all or nothing doesn't work here, right? But you may have to compromise, okay? If things are crazy at work and this is really important to you and this is what you need to do and you want to do and is, all these things, then we might have to make some adjustments, okay? You cannot keep the same standard of work and brain power and everything in the same amount of time when you're also adding in pumping to your workday. It's just not realistic. Not only is it taking up time, it's also taking up brain space. So to think that you can keep these same, probably really high standards, I know you, right? And also hit the milk mastery, it may not be realistic. And I hate to say that because I want you to have everything. I want you to have it all. And I feel really passionately that you can. But sometimes it takes a little compromise in one area or the other. Either work or milk or finding a happy balance that feels good for you. There will be unforeseen things that come up, all right? And being realistic in what you can handle and what you want to handle will really help you, okay? Doesn't have to be all or nothing. Oh my gosh, I worked with a mom one time who she was in residency. She got 3 weeks off. And I guess she could have taken longer, but she didn't want to delay her school. It was just crazy, okay? So we had a 3-week maternity leave and then try and get her back on this intense residency schedule, not only leaving her baby, she is not even healed from birth. And we're also trying to pump during, it was hard, right? And to be honest, she had to make some compromises, right? Because milk was really important to her. And then after a while, that kind of flipped. She got into a new rotation that was really intensive. She didn't have the space to give, either the time or the brain space. And she had to sacrifice her milk supply a little bit. I hate to say that, but we've got to be realistic, right? And figure out what's really important to you. And then figure out a plan to get the most important things to you working. So much for a short video. Sorry. I'm trying. Ooh. Thankfully, we only have one more. And honestly, this is one of my favorites. And that is to control the controllables. All right. You may not be able to control things like traumatic events surrounding your birth. Okay. Feeding difficulties in the early days postpartum that affect your long-term milk supply. Very small breast storage capacity, or daycare overfeeding your baby, or the chaotic nature of your job, or passive-aggressive remarks from your coworkers when you leave for a pumping break, or the fact that you even have to go back to work, maybe even earlier than you wanted, right? These are examples of things that are out of your control. Now, I think some of those maybe you could have a little control or find control, but the important part is to remember, what can you control? And again, some of those things, you're not as out of control as maybe you think you are. If your daycare is overfeeding your baby, you have options. Like, you don't have to leave them at that daycare, right? You also can send just prepared bottles and say, here's what you got. This is what you're going to do, But focusing on the things you can control is going to make this experience so much easier, especially when things fall apart, okay? You can control what you do with what you have right now. All right. If your milk supply is lower than you want, okay, sometimes we can't control some of the things that got us to this point, but what are you going to do about it right now? Are you going to get help? Are you going to try the things you need to do? Are you going to readjust your goals and figure out what the new normal might look like for you? Setting boundaries and making your goals achievable is something that's also in your control, right? You can set boundaries around things that are important to you. You can do that. You can also make your goals something that feels achievable to you and adjust them as needed. That's within your control. You can also find help, right? You have control in getting help you need, whether that's a therapist or a new lactation consultant or some pumping help, working mom, coach. Like, that's kind of what we do. If you need a night nanny, a house cleaner, like, what help would be the most beneficial for you in your life? You have control whether you get that or not. You also have control of how you respond and react to situations. I know your coworkers can give you like judgy looks and be like, I wish I had that many breaks, How you react and respond is in your control. You can't control them or the dumb stuff they say, but you can control how you respond. You can control what expectations and standards you place on yourself, okay? Society has their whatevers, but what matters is the ones that you put on yourself, right? You can control those. You can't control the ones that your partner puts on you or your boss or, like I said, society. But what about you? What are your standards? You can control that. I encourage you to explore things you can control and get creative. I actually had one of our clients recently had found some unique control in her life. Things were a little chaotic. One of her caregivers that was close to her and just was the only option for her was overfeeding her baby a lot and often using formula instead of breast milk that she had pumped and ready in the fridge, right? Honestly, a lot of this was out of her control. She already tried to address it. It just wasn't going to work. So she decided to pause the formula subscription, which was something that was in her control. So it just wasn't available. And I was so proud of her, honestly, for not throwing her hands up in the air and saying, this, whatever. Such a power move on her part and made her feel so in control. And I was so proud of her for that, for finding a nugget of something she could control in a situation that felt very out of her control. There are going to be unexpected things that happen, okay? And we do our best to deal with them in the moment. And sometimes we try and catch up later. And sometimes we never catch up. And I hate to say that, but it's reality sometimes. The sooner you can adjust and make a plan and fix what happened, the better. Sometimes that includes readjusting our mindset and goals. Sometimes that means finding some help. Sometimes that means giving yourself a lot of grace and realizing that you don't have to be perfect. I hope you found some good tips in this video. Can you comment below and tell me what your favorite one was? Or if there were some things that you found that have helped that I missed, all right? If you want some help in this process and you want a coach and a guide along this whole experience, especially when days like this happen, in case you don't handle it as gracefully as Janet did, you can message us in the middle of the day freaking out and we will help you. If you want that, there's a link in the description to apply. But good luck and happy pumping.